Hi, welcome to my new show, Brain Attack, where I explain all the different ways psychological warfare is being used against you and the rest of the pliable American peasantry. You know, just some light YouTube content. Now, I'm not spinning any theories here. I'm going to prove to you that the government and the media knowingly and maliciously use disinformation to manipulate you. And I'm going to do it using just one little footnote. You're not going to want to miss this. So for today's example, I'm going to take something from the Mueller investigation, which you may remember started back in 2017 when Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, seen pictured here with me on the street, wrote a letter to Donald Trump outlining all the reasons why he should fire FBI Director James Comey. Then Trump fired James Comey. Then Rod Rosenstein was like, hey, whoa, what are you doing? You can't, that's illegal or something. We got to have an investigation. That was the sequence of events. It made sense to a lot of people. I think we all had low blood sugar at the time. I don't know. But next thing you know, we're knee-deep in a Russia collusion investigation. Now, one of the first things we got out of this was a plea deal between hashtag Team Mueller and hashtag George Papadopoulos. Much more difficult hashtag. You can see why that never trended. But either way, he pled guilty for lying to the FBI. But that wasn't very exciting. It didn't have enough Russia stuff in it. So just to kind of, tease the public a little, Mueller put into his court filing this footnote, and the press went crazy.
As Papadopoulos persisted to set up a meeting, the discussion reached the highest levels of the Trump campaign, with then-Chairman Paul Manafort and senior aide Rick Gates emailing to say, quote, we need someone to communicate that DT is not doing these trips.
It should be someone low level in the campaign so as not to send any signal. How do you read that comment from Manafort?
Was it to hide the fact that there was a connection that was being opened with the Russians?
So what people are talking about is that there's a footnote in this document, right, in which there's a back and forth about, well, should we set up a meeting? Should we have the candidate go himself? Yeah. And someone says, well, you can't send the candidate. It should be a low-level person.
And you look at the emails that went back and forth, particularly the email from a campaign official which said, we need someone to communicate that Donald Trump is not doing these trips and that someone low level in the campaign should go so as not to send any signal. I think then you have to start, unspooling all of this and trying to figure out who these people were, what they were doing, what they intended to get from the Russians, and what the Russians intended to provide.
Let's discuss further. We need to make sure that there's no signal that's being sent. We need low-level campaign people to be traveling to Russia, not Donald Trump himself.
So the idea was George Papadopoulos was trying to set up a meeting between Russia and the Trump campaign, and the Trump campaign was like, yeah, let's do this, but we got to keep it low-key, so send somebody nobody knows so we don't arouse suspicion. That was the news story, okay? And everyone was saying that. The New York Times said it. They said Trump shouldn't make the trips. Someone low-level should. The Associated Press was saying it. It was a big scandal. Russia, everyone's upset. We had months and months, years of this investigation. And then finally, 2 years later, in 2019, we got somehow a letter made it to the public, and we got the context of that line from the footnote. And it was a letter Chuck Grassley sent, because Chuck Grassley, everyone in Congress had all the emails. So when Mueller's court document was filed, Chuck Grassley was like, hey, you left some context out to that line in the footnote. He says in the letter, specifically in the follow-up exchanges between Mr. Gates and Manafort, Gates responded to Manafort within minutes of his request to have someone low-level communicate that Mr. Trump was not doing these trips. Gates writes, agree. What if I get our correspondence coordinator to do it? This is the person responding to all mail of not importance. It would be a general letter. Manafort responds again, good. Thus, the additional exchange does not appear to show the Trump campaign was considering sending someone to Russia in place of the candidate. Rather, it appears to show that the Trump campaign considered the request of non-importance and sought to have a low-level person, the correspondence coordinator, communicate that Mr. Trump was not going on foreign trips. They weren't trying to have a secret meeting between the campaign and Russia. They were rejecting the idea of a meeting. So that's a completely different meaning, and I feel like putting that in an indictment is very obviously on Mueller's side psychological warfare, right? Because he knew the truth. He had additional information that was kept from us, but he selectively pulled that out because it implied something, right? But then the press, they also had the emails, so they also had the context. They also knew all this stuff, right? The Associated Press said that they had the emails. CNN said they had the emails. And then we know for sure the press had the emails because of this little slip-up on MSNBC.
I was just going to ask Ken a quick question, if I might.
Go ahead.
Ken, just to understand your reporting a little bit, so are you saying that Papadopoulos went to Manafort and basically asked Manafort whether the campaign could have a direct meeting between Putin and Trump? Is that what you're reporting?
Well, this is actually from my colleague Julia Ainsley, and she's identified there's a particular email in the chain where Manafort says, we're not going to take this meeting between Trump and Putin. Trump is not going to meet with Putin during the campaign, and we want a low-level person to answer so as not to send a signal. So in that sense, it's exculpatory. It's Manafort saying, we're not going to meet with Putin. That's crazy. But it also shows that he was aware of Papadopoulos' efforts and interactions with these Russians.
I just want to say it may not be exculpatory. It may actually be incriminating because it shows they don't want to have an overt high-level meeting. They want to keep everything sub rosa and quiet.
Well,
see, when that was shot, it was October. It was the day the indictment came out. So he hadn't gotten the memo yet that they were all supposed to be lying about it, and he accidentally said the truth. Fortunately, there was a helpful commissar there to clean up his mess and put them back on the message that, Russia was colluding. It's all lies. They all know they're lying. They had the documents. They knew it wasn't about trying to set up a secret meeting in Russia, but they were telling you, they were selling you that story. And that is psychological warfare. And just keep in mind, that was all from one footnote, okay? Just wait till we get to the big stories. This is Brain Attack. I'm David Angelo. Now let's do a fancy lighting cue to get out of here. All right, that'll work.